I'm going to do a quick book talk about four new books that I've read recently that are a little bit more mature. So if you are ready for books that have maybe more mature characters and mature content and mature themes, have a quick chat with your teacher first. But these would be books that I would recommend for that category. The first three are all actually murder mysteries. I love murder mysteries. It wasn't easy in the past to find good YA murder mysteries, but there have been a few that have come out recently, and now it seems to be a genre that's becoming much more popular. The first one is One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus, and this book is about four high school students who, under very dodgy circumstances, all end up in detention, and none of them really understand how they got there. But they all end up in detention with a fifth student named Simon, and Simon runs a gossip app throughout the school. And what's interesting about Simon is that the following day, he is planning to release gossip tidbits about each of the four characters who are in detention with him. During the course of detention, Simon ends up dying. And we are left wondering who could possibly have killed Simon. The police are wondering that. Then a website pops up that has some speculation, and it's almost Simon talking beyond the dead, and is making these four students look quite guilty. They come together, they all claim their innocence, and they all come together and try to figure out who really killed Simon and who's running this website, and just general what is going on with this mystery. What I really liked about this book was it did a great job with character development. At the beginning, I admit, I didn't really like any of the four students. I was not really into it. And then throughout the course of the book, they each have such a strong character arc that they're completely different by the end. And I ended up highly invested in all of them. I'm also going to talk about Karen McManus's new book. It's her second book, Two Can Keep a Secret. It just came out a couple of months ago. It is not a sequel to One of Us is Lying. It's completely unrelated, but I have to say this writer is nailing the YA murder mystery genre because she's written a second book that is also just absolutely amazing. It takes place in a small town in Vermont. We've got twin siblings, Ezra and Ellery, who are coming to stay with their grandmother from Los Angeles because their own mother has had some problems with drug and alcohol abuse, and she's going into a rehabilitation center. So they're staying with their grandmother in the meantime. The history of their grandmother's town is a bit sketchy. It's got a history of unsolved murders. Their own aunt, their mother's sister, was murdered 20 years before, and nobody ever discovered who the killer was. 5 years before, another high school girl was murdered. Right before they arrive in the town, there's a hit and run death of one of the high school teachers. That is, again, it's a mystery. So they arrive in the town, and immediately the killer or a killer, someone, starts to leave all these threatening messages around, threatening the high school students and saying that they're going to kill again. There's just a lot of drama. So they arrive, and a girl goes missing. They end up becoming friends with a boy named Malcolm. Malcolm's older brother was the main suspect in the death of the girl 5 years before, so it was never proven, so his brother's just left town, but he's got this, obviously bad reputation, and he's a bit of an outsider. So they become friends with Malcolm, and they get together to try to figure out who's leaving these threatening messages, who is killing people, and what they can do to stop them. The third murder mystery book I'm going to talk about is called People Like Us. And again, this is a bit of a more mature YA murder mystery book. It takes place in a private exclusive boarding school in Connecticut in the eastern part of the United States. The protagonist is a girl named Kay. Kay is a scholarship student. So when she first arrives at the school, she doesn't really fit in with the rest of the wealthy students. So her strategy is just to kind of become really mean and nasty in order to get people's attention and kind of rise up the social ladder. And it works. By the time she's in her upper grade, she is one of the most popular girls in school. She and her friends aren't really very nice to people, and they've got some enemies. One night after a dance, they're coming home and they find a dead girl in the lake by the school. It looks like her death was a suicide, but the police determined that it was actually a murder made to look like a suicide. Kay then receives a message with a link to a website that's from the dead girl, and it instructs her to do all these terrible things to her friends and to people that she knows, or else the person is threatening to reveal a secret from Kay's past that she doesn't want anyone to know. So she basically spends the book kind of becoming friends with different people, allying with new people, trying to figure out, number one, who's writing this website, because it seems like it's coming from the dead girl, but how is that possible? And trying to figure out who's killed the girl. The last book that I want to book talk is called Are We All Lemmings and Snowflakes? And this is an interesting book in that the whole story takes place in a mental health facility. It's a posh mental health facility for teenagers called Camp Reset. So it is more like an expensive camp, but it's a place where teenagers go to get help with their various mental health issues that they might be having. So we've got the protagonist is Olive. She comes to Camp Reset after she's had a couple of manic episodes, and we find out that she has a history of those. She refuses to find out an official diagnosis for her condition, though, because she doesn't want to be labeled. She doesn't want to be labeled by any condition. She becomes friends, or she tries to become friends with other teenagers in the camp, tries to figure out, relationships and how to have friendships with them. She particularly befriends a boy named Lewis, and Lewis is a maths genius. So they become friends, and she gets this idea of, let's put your genius math skills to work and try to come up with an algorithm for sanity. So she thinks that if they can just come up with the right mathematical algorithm, it can help them become sane, in her words. So later they realize that they kind of need to think bigger and that the problem might not be them, but actually the rest of the world. So then they decide, let's try to fix the rest of the world. And they enlist the help of other friends, and their big idea is to infuse kindness into the world. And so they come up with these pretty interesting ideas of how exactly they're going to infuse kindness into the world in order to make the world a better place that is just more accepting of them and a better place for them to live. It's an interesting book. It's got some fascinating characters. I like that the adults in the book are actually shown as competent and helpful, which sometimes in books like this they are not. And it's got some realistic portrayals of mental illness, I think. So I really appreciated this book, and I thought it was a really interesting read. The books that are coming from the high school fiction collection, I have put downstairs on the first floor of the library on one of these book displays. And these book displays, I just want to let you know, if you're not aware of them, about once a month, sometimes twice a month, depending on how much time I have. But at least once a month, I swap out the books, and I really go through both the middle school and high school fiction collections. Some of them are new arrivals. Some of them I just go through the collections and try to pick out books that I want to highlight because I think they would actually be really interesting to a variety of students. So if you have been in the library but have walked past these displays, or if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily come to the library on a regular basis, I would love to just invite you to pop in and just take a look at the books on these two display tables, read the blurbs. I really think if you do, you'll be able to find something that sounds interesting to you. So please, by all means, come on in and check them out.